Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and today we answer the question, can a Space Marine turn against the Imperium but not go to Chaos? We answer this by looking at the life of Ahazra Redth. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. If you have any questions or suggestions, please comment down below. And if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It is because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on Ahazra Redth. It is easy to call a Space Marine that is not fighting on the Imperial side a traitor. But the reality of most Renegade Battle Brothers that have not turned to Chaos is much more complicated. A Space Marine is tasked with a commitment to the Emperor of Mankind, usually the protection of a planet, a resource, or even an entire sector. Every Space Marine chapter is an independent military force that is free to complete this duty in the best way they know how. The Adeptus Astartes will invest all of his superhuman capabilities to the prosecution of this obligation. Unfortunately, Space Marines must deal with the incompetence of humanity, specifically the humans that hold power within the Imperium of Man, and have turned the Emperor's domain into a backwater, bureaucratic swamp that will often get in the way of most Space Marines' objectives. This is why most Space Marines care little about individual humans. They are a burden to superhuman warriors of the Adeptus Astartes. Every now and then there will be an extremely honorable battle brother that must make a tough decision to harm Imperial forces in order to complete his duty to the Emperor of Mankind. These renegades are often excommunicated from the greater Imperium of Man, but in their minds they continue to honor the Emperor of Mankind, who bestowed unto them the freedom to wage war and the duty to serve his greater agenda. One of these renegade battle brothers was Ahazra Redth. Ahazra Redth is the loyalist renegade chief librarian of the Mantis Warrior Space Marine chapter. This unfortunate chapter fought against the Imperial forces during the Bad App War. But while the Imperium views the actions of this brave battle brother as heresy, the truth is that Ahazra Redth was simply fighting not just for the autonomy of the chapter, but also the freedom of all of the Adeptus Astartes. Ahazra Redth was born into the deep desert tribes of Tranquility III, the Mantis Warriors' recruitment world, also known as Bittergeir to the indigenous people. This future Astarte developed his psychic gifts early on. When he was still a child, his family undertook the dangerous pilgrimage across the sands of the Valley of the Nine Winds in order to present him to the Mantis Warriors for judgment. Although too young to begin the transformation into an Astarte warrior, nevertheless the chapter's librarians sensed a great future for this boy and began to school him in the control of the mystic arts. From the day he had been brought forth, he showed a potential seen perhaps 1 in 100 generations. As time progressed, Redth grew into a skilled neophyte who fought as a Space Marine scout in a score of campaigns, where his burgeoning gift of prognostication allowed him to advise and improve upon the plans of veteran Space Marines 5 times his age. His powers grew exceptionally after joining the Mantis Warriors Librarium and learning the deeper mysteries of the chapter. He quickly gained a reputation not only as a master of ambush and an expert field tactician, but also a master of prophecy and divination, whose words had been trusted by all who heard them. Ahazra Redth would go on to become a chief librarian of the Mantis Warriors, and serve as both a powerful battle psyker and the wisest strategist. He would become one of the greatest chapter librarians in the Mantis Warriors' history, known to both the Mantis Warriors and the people of the Edimon cluster as the Dust Prophet for his abilities and writings. When the Bad App War finally went against his chapter, it was his leadership that managed to outwit the loyalist commanders for so long, and persevere his brethren in the face of the storm. As a matter of fact, at the outset of the Bad App War, when the Mantis Warriors first joined the secessionists, the chapter was somewhat below full strength, having recently conducted several heavy raids into the fringes of the Maelstrom, and had suffered significant losses to their 4th Company's purging of Genestealer infestations on Vercruz. The reason for the Mantis Warriors' involvement in Luf Huron's rebellion against the Imperium was simple. They were fiercely territorial and loyal to their allies. They considered the Oath of Brotherhood taken when the Maelstrom Wardens Alliance had been formed as utterly unbreakable. The Mantis Warriors saw an attack on one of the chapters of the Allegiance, even if it was by the Imperium itself, as an attack on all of them. However, the chapter was starting to have grave misgivings, both over the course the secession was taking, and the true nature and goals of the Astral Claws and their leader Huron, particularly after the death of the Mantis Warriors chapter master, Yarvin Sartak, in the Tyrant's company during the attack on the disastrous Parley at Grief. But by this point their die had been cast, and too much blood had been spilled on both sides for anything but a violent resolution to be reached as to the Mantis Warriors' fate. Chief Librarian Ahazra Redth stepped forward, taking the reins of leadership and effectively becoming the master of the Mantis Warriors until the end of the war. Ahazra Redth further distanced his chapter from the machinations of the tyrant of Badab, but true to his word, both he and the Mantis warriors remained a fighting part of the secessionist cause until the bitter end. It is a testament both to Ahazra Redth's skills as a commander and the strength of his divinatory powers that even isolated, vastly outnumber, and facing the murderous onslaught of the Carcharodon's chapter towards the war's end, he and his dwindling forces managed to avoid execution, let alone inflict losses to their foes in the defense of their domain. Ahazra Redth's fate remains unknown, and although he is said by some to have perished in the last days of fighting on Tranquility II, his body was never found. And those were 40 facts on Ahazra Redth. I hope this inspires you guys to create a cool renegade character within your chapter, or if you're playing a role-playing game that's centered around the 40K universe, I hope this kind of gives you some ideas into creating a renegade space marine. I will create a video that basically lays out the potential scenarios that a full space marine chapter can take in order to be a renegade chapter. Not be allied to any of the Chaos Gods or Chaos Undivided, but also not be fighting for the Imperium of Man. Kind of like what I did with the can a space marine have a family video, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. If you guys have any other questions about any other topics, please comment down below, and if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It is because of them that we can make these types of videos. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. It's just $1 a month. If you can't support us on Patreon, that's perfectly okay. Just liking, commenting, and sharing helps out the channel. So thank you guys ahead of time, and I will talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwan with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Oh, I used to put my freedom first in any